So one day this summer, Mrs. Ganung and I were looking to find a place to eat lunch. And we were down by the docks in Helsinki, Finland. Food is expensive in Finland, so we were shopping around for a relatively cheap place to eat, so we might grab a bite to eat. And we found this perfect place that served the very best salmon soup for a reasonable price. It was crowded because the salmon soup was so delicious. We were lucky to find a small table with a very nice view of the harbor at this wonderful outdoor cafe. A few minutes after we sat down, a woman about our age asked if she could join us. Naturally, we said, of course. We welcomed to our table. We were always looking to meet someone new. After a few awkward moments of silence, we began a conversation that completely changed our travel plans. She asked us where we were from and where we were headed. We told her we were staying in a Lutheran minister's home, a friend of mine, halfway between Helsinki and the ancient Finnish capital of Turku. And we were thinking about going north to Rovaniemi on the Arctic Circle. We told her that we were intrigued by the Sami people and their culture, their religion, their mythology, and mostly their relationship to the reindeer. But we told her we thought that it might be too commercial, and we weren't sure we had the time or the money to get that far north on this particular trip. She stopped us right there and she said, "Oh no, you have got to go. I'm from Inari, which is 400 kilometers north of Rovaniemi. You're right, you don't want to stop in Rovaniemi for too long. It is commercial. It's the home of Santa Claus. It's a very touristy place. But here's what you should do. You should fly to Oulu, which is the unofficial capital of northern Finland, which is best known for its air guitar championships every August. And just a little aside, I don't know why you'd spend so much time practicing air guitar when you could play the real guitar. But, you know, no offense to you masters of air guitar out there. So she said, fly north to Oulu, then rent a car and drive to Inari. That's where you'll meet the Sami people, and that's where you'll see all herds of reindeer in the town, on the main roads, everywhere. If you have time, you must do this. And later that day, we went back to our temporary home. We started to do some research on the internet about the Inari and the Sami people in the northern tip of Finland. We looked at videos of reindeer, and then we checked flights, rental cars, costs, hotel prices. And we thought to ourselves, can we really do this? And then we decided, yeah, we can do this. As a matter of fact, we have to do this because we may never be here again, have this opportunity. So by evening of that day, we had our plane tickets, we had a rental car, and a rustic place to stay on a pristine lake in Inari, far north of the latitude that begins the Arctic Circle. Within days of meeting this Finnish woman, we found ourselves hiking around and over wet boulders of granite, by untamed wild rivers filled with trout, salmon, grayling, and Arctic char. And my mouth was watering. I didn't have my fly rod with me. It was very tough to walk by them. And we were in the remote Arctic forest with stands of birch trees, pines, cloudberries, exotic mushrooms, reindeer, and large piranha-like mosquitoes that drew more than a pint of blood from my bare legs. So wearing shorts was a bad choice. But what an incredible experience this was. It was like a dream. It wasn't part of our original itinerary, and we didn't know anything about this part of Finland before we met this Finnish woman in Helsinki. But because we were open and we listened and we connected with another human being from a part of the world we didn't know, and we were ready for an adventure, we ended up exploring the Finnish portion of the Arctic and learned about the Sami culture and people and enjoyed our first reindeer burgers. The next part of our journey was through the Baltic states, where we met with senior students Ziggy Jaivaltis and Juste Sumaneskaite. Juste, that's pretty close, right? And we had this wonderful dinner. Again, we're around a table with Ziggy, and he gives us this tour of the city of Vilnius. And a day later, we go to have lunch with Juste and her family in her home city of Kaunas, where she also gives us a tour. And our last night in Lithuania, we decided to stay in the town of Nida, which is on the Curonian Spit. We were a mile from Kaliningrad, Russia. We didn't know much about the Baltic countries before this trip, and we certainly never would have stayed on the Curonian Spit if it wasn't for Ziggy and Juste. We'd never heard of the Curonian Spit. It's about 60 miles long, and it connects, half of it's in Russia, the other part is in Lithuania. It's an isthmus. In most places, it's less than a mile wide. It starts out with a pine and birch forest, which eventually gives way to vast sand dunes that separate the Baltic Sea to the west from an ocean-sized lagoon on the east. It was an amazing experience hiking through these dunes to watch the sunset on the Baltic Sea. And it never would have happened if we didn't visit Ziggy and Yuste and listen to their recommendations, even though the next day we would have a long car ride on unfamiliar roads to get back to Tallinn, Estonia, to make the ferry to Helsinki. So my point here is this. You're going to meet all kinds of students here at Taft. There are 44 countries represented, 33 states. The Taft community is a microcosm of our global village. The world is here before your eyes. If you remain open, if you listen, if you challenge yourself to engage others that are not in your circle of friends, and if you're willing to be surprised by something new, you will undoubtedly grow and be transformed in a good way. As Mr. Mack said on Tuesday, the Taft experience is like sitting around a big table. We're asking you to come to the table day after day, week after week, to connect with people whose life experiences, whose place of origins are very different than yours. You might not end up in the Finnish Arctic or the Curonian Spit, but you may end up in another part of the world when you meet a friend who lives halfway around the globe. But you might not even travel anywhere geographically, but just by meeting someone from another part of the world and hearing their story, you will certainly be enriched, enhanced, and transformed. So maybe you're here as a star football player or a top field hockey recruit or a soccer player. Great, that's wonderful. We want you here. But don't only focus on the sport or the thing that you excel in that brought you here. Remain open to all possibilities that will be available to you here at Taft. There are many opportunities, things like the debate team, theater, the arts, music, community service, a multitude of clubs, and if you're religious groups like the Jewish Student Organization, Focus for Christians, we have a meditation community, a Sangha, we have a spiritual life committee, council with students from religions all over the world. So whatever, and there's so much more. So make sure you intentionally force yourself, get out of your comfort zone on a regular basis. To quote Supreme Court Justice from the last century, Oliver Wendell Holmes, a mind, and I might say a life, that is exposed to a new idea or experience never returns to the same dimension. So once a week, maybe twice, challenge yourself to go and sit at the lunch table or a dinner table with someone you don't know, someone who seems on the surface to be different than you, and get into a conversation. It could happen that such a seemingly mundane encounter could change the direction of your life. It could open you up in such a way that you realize that you have some hidden talent or an interest or a calling that you didn't know you had. But you won't know this unless you try and see what happens with such an encounter. So as a school chaplain, I preside over, or I am the proprietor here of morning meeting, and this is our sacred time together. And although we meet here in the same space as assembly on Wednesday and Saturday, we're here on Tuesday and Thursday. It's a very different experience. As Mr. Mack said again on Tuesday, it's a different experience because morning meeting evolved out of evening vesper services. They met 4 times a week, and it was a very formal, a tie and jacket, solemn, a very serious, a time of deep inward reflection. You know, when I was told that students had to be silent as they passed through Lincoln Lobby and came in here very quietly. Now, we're not going to return to the days of formal attire, but I'd like to recapture some of that mindset this year in morning meeting. The purpose of morning meeting for all of us is, why are we here? To explore moral, ethical, and spiritual values in the broadest sense, through the arts, through music, through politics, through history, through science, through religion, through literature, through poetry, and through a variety of other media. You know, we'll have bright, noteworthy, and thoughtful speakers this year. Some will be outside guests, some will be faculty members, and some will be your peers. And the way you welcome them is with your full attention and your deepest reverence and respect. This isn't a time for homework, texting, Instagram, or Twitter. Same rules apply as the classroom, but it's even more of a different experience because it's a very sacred time. It's an opportunity to learn and grow and expand your understanding of yourself and the world in both mind and heart. You will not always agree with each speaker we have in morning meeting. Sometimes they will address difficult and controversial issues. But remember, a true liberal arts education like the one you will receive here at Taft is about questioning, it's about analyzing, it's about critiquing and engaging in the marketplace of ideas. The point is, listen with a discerning mind and examine why you feel the way you do. Morning meeting offers you a time to think deeply and meaningfully about what it is that you value and what it is that the Taft community values. And then what are the things in your life which you're willing to sacrifice for to achieve a certain goal? And then to think about, will that goal that you're striving to achieve, will it benefit just you or will it benefit others? Will it help in some way to make this a more peaceful, compassionate, and just world? These are some of the things we want you to ponder in this time. So here's the format. Almost always, after we have a guest speaker, we'll have a Q&A session in the faculty room during the next block. So if you're free, we'd love for you to join us. But your teacher may also bring you, depending on the content of the speaker's talk. Now, it may relate to something going on in your classroom, so they'll bring you to that Q&A time. So here's how it works. The guest speaker will be standing in this little alcove here to my right, and when they're introduced by me or another faculty member or student, they will come up these stairs, and as soon as they are standing behind this podium or out on the stage, depending on what they plan to do, just take a few deep breaths, be mindful, be present, and imagine that you hear again in your mind the sound of the bell that you will hear in the beginning of morning meeting. And you will be so silent that we will be able to hear a pin drop. Now, I did this 7 or 8 years ago. I think it's time to do it again. And I want to make sure that one of the lower mids up the top row can hear this. This is how silent we want to be. We're good. So why are you going to be like this? Why are you going to be silent and attentive? Because you are Taft students, and a Taftie, according to our portrait of a graduate, is a student who acts with honor, with integrity, and respect. She or he possesses intellectual curiosity and resourcefulness, and actively engages in the process of learning, and works diligently at cultivating a moral thoughtfulness through exposure to various ethical perspectives and ways of thinking that certainly will be offered here in morning meeting. And a Taft student is a student who engages with the diversity and sees it as essential to the growth of all community members. These are the reasons why you're respectful and you listen to our morning meeting speakers. I needn't say any more about this because I know all of you understand. So I promise you this, we're going to have another incredible year before us in morning meeting with speakers that will open your minds and hearts up to new dimensions and new ways of seeing the world. You will be challenged, you will be stretched, but you will grow and benefit from what each of them has to offer. So I know we're in beginning our second week of school, but I want to welcome you all back and welcome the new students to morning meeting. And I wish you all of God's blessings, and have a great day. It's a beautiful day out there. Take care.